Arriving here and now, maybe joining me in closing the eyes just for one moment, if that is safe and available to you. Turning into the inner world, the spaciousness within the self, the whole self fully present now, and noticing the breath as it is, witnessing and observing with compassionate curiosity the inhale, the exhale, and the space in between. Noticing where the breath is traveling within the body, the quality and rhythm of the breath. And maybe inviting the inhale and the exhale to lengthen gently and slowly, feeling the breath expand throughout the body and beyond. Sensing the origin of the breath, wherever that is for you. Checking in with the lungs and the heart space. Or maybe the breath originates in the belly, or even from outside the body. Noticing what you notice. And noticing the sound of the breath. Maybe it's an inner hearing of sound. Or the sound of the air traveling through the nostrils. Or releasing on the exhale from the lungs. Like this is your first ever time in physical form, and with a beginner's mind, with fresh eyes, you're simply fascinated by what it is that this body is, fascinated by how this body is. And with that listening, I invite you to notice the sounds alongside the breath that are with and within you now. What is the most distant sound that is present with you? What is the sound that is closest to your core? And are there any sounds present that part of you might wish were not there? Welcoming any resistance to sound. And welcoming the sound itself. Can you just for now welcome any resistance that may be present, any judging or labeling, fixing or trying? And can you welcome what is? Welcoming any resistance and welcoming that which you may be resisting. Zooming out the sense of self on the level of the divine, that which you are, that which includes all that is and seems to be. Welcoming all that is with love and light and gratitude. And centering now in your core essence, your center, whatever your sense of that is in this moment, the truth of you, the sanctuary of your wholeness and divinity, arriving in that space, that sense, that knowingness now. And can you choose to live from here, to live from your truth, your wholeness, your divinity? Are you choosing to live from here, to be from here? Do you choose to live from here, to be from here, to be here. Enjoying this presence and connection of self, of oneness, of that which is. Now inviting the sound of the singing bowl to wash through you and seal in the benefits of this for all that is. And as you are complete, gently returning to the breath and blinking the eyes open. Welcome, 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 and hello again. I am Pei-Ling, and it is such a joy to be here with you and to spiral within together. This is Spiraling Within, a multidimensional container for connecting in the present moment. Yeah. And we get to be here connecting with each other from this space, from this place of our wholeness and our divinity, heart to heart, one to one. And yeah, it's just such a blessing. There's really nothing to do. There's nothing to do, and there's no agenda. I definitely have no agenda for this. And there's something really, really wonderful and magical about just showing up empty to the present moment and trusting that if this is where I am, if this is where we are, then this is where we are. Because as much as we can plan or prepare ahead of time, life happens in the present moment. And this is the present moment, whichever present moment this happens to be for you. Maybe it's 2053 when you are listening to this. That would be cool. And in some timeline dimension, that already is right now in this one quantum now moment. And that's really cool. At least for me right now, it's, what day is it? It is June 2nd, 2022. I am sitting in what was my childhood bedroom that I've since repainted and redecorated, as I am joyfully and gratefully staying with my parents for these months. And we are joined by, in the distance, the sound of a barking puppy, May May, who she very much, her barking inspired the meditation that we just went through. And I found myself, as I was inspired to sit down and record this with you and to join you in this space, her barking. And so essentially she hangs out with me most of the day, but there comes a time such as this where I am guided to set her outside and to seal her away from my bedroom door. And she barks. She barks and she cries. And I could wait for a perfect moment where she isn't barking, or and I can welcome the part that resists her barking. So there's definitely a part, there's this energy that's like, oh, Mei shouldn't be barking. There shouldn't be barking or potentially distracting background noises when recording something like a podcast, because that would be an interference. That is a frequency of interference that should not be there. And maybe you have examples of your life of, even in this now moment, where is there anything in your awareness that part of you is saying that shouldn't be there, or it would be better if that weren't there? Even that, the subtlety of comparing what is to what could be. So that idea that this transmission, this connection, this communication would be better if Mei weren't outside barking. That is a bloop, bloop, bloop. That's a bloop, bloop, bloop mental formation. It's a comparison programming that really, and I point to the forehead because that's at least where I experience those types of thoughts. Any should thought or comparison thought, any better or worse, right or wrong thought, it tends to be hanging out in the brain, the human brain area. And if I just drop awareness from that human brain, just maybe like a foot lower, down into the heart space, suddenly what seemed to be a do or die situation is no longer as do or die. Because in living from the mind and believing the clouds of mental formations that pass through as ultimate truth, which we have the sovereign choice to live anything really as our truth. I could identify with that and create my entire reality around that idea that Mei shouldn't be barking, or it would be better if Mei weren't barking. And that would have a whole domino effect in terms of how my experience would shift around that. It's essentially like, what is, and so in the meditation, I talked about centering. What is the center from which I am pivoting or experiencing what is? So as I've gotten to experience over the years, because I very much, for the vast majority of my life, for over 2 decades, I lived from the mind, the forebrain, the survival brain. Some people call it the monkey brain. And it was really just doing the best it could, the best it knew how, the best it was programmed to be. And when I say best, it's a non-hierarchical best, if you can conceptualize that or sense into what I mean by that. It's the fullest expression of its potential in that moment. And living from the mind, from the intellectual, logical, analytical, reasoning mind, the judging mind, the separating mind, because that is what separation consciousness also manifests as. It's the seeing things as being separate, seeing that Mei barking during this and Mei not barking during this are two separate events. And yet, she's not barking right now. And so we can see that within one experience, both can coexist, that they're not actually two separate instances. But that's like the process of discernment, even when discerning from the intellect or thinking. Thinking is such a thinking. It's thoughtfulness, just like being full of thoughts. The way my programming used to be, that I chose for it to be, was really around thoughts as being the ultimate source of truth, or the ultimate capacity for, like, how agile and flexible. I suppose I still resonate with that, of just like an openness and a flexibility with thoughts, because then it's not actually being tied to one thought, but the capacity to be expansive and receptive to a variety of thoughts. And even that, though, even living from the realm of thoughts, it's like that's what I knew. That's what was familiar. That's what was comfortable for me. I was like, yeah, this is what it means to be human. You think, you problem solve, oh my gosh, critical thinking. That's like a skill that they have on every class school thing. It's like, okay, their problem solving abilities, their critical thinking abilities. I am not interested in critically thinking. Not presently. I'm really uninterested in critically thinking. And critically thinking from the place of literally being critical with thought, being like criticizing, or there's criticizing, and then there's that level of discernment as well, of figuring out what something is, figuring out what is being communicated, and just thought in general. It's when living from the mind, when living from ego, from thought programs, it can be easy to believe that without thought, we no longer exist. That thought is necessary in order to be. And this very much also relates to, I have an uncle who has Alzheimer's, and that idea of forgetting the self, just forgetting, forgetting the self. It's like, who am I if I forget that I am who I am? And with or without a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, many people, and I've gotten to experience this too, are choosing to live from forgetting the self. And by the self in this context, I mean the whole self, the divine self, the multidimensional self, the conscious self. And I love this. There's an episode of Tara Brach's podcast where, what is her podcast called? It might be called Radical Compassion. or that's her book. Anyway, Tara Brach is wonderful. And in one of them, she shares this anecdote that really stuck with me. And if I just paraphrase it, it was essentially talking about a smoker who was in the hospital for, I think maybe for his lungs, like lung surgery. And the daughter was pleading the dad, like, please stop smoking. And he goes, no, I'm never going to stop smoking. I'm a smoker. That's who I am. And so he was identifying himself, his sense of self, with being a smoker. And then he has a stroke. And it affects his memory centers. And suddenly, after he has that stroke and he recovers from that, he stops smoking. He just never smokes again. And the shift was that he forgot that he identified himself as being a smoker. He forgot that he was a smoker. And so in forgetting that he was a smoker, the attachment to that identity was no longer energizing his experience and allowed him essentially the blank slate of infinite possibility of being anyone. And I love that anecdote because of that question of who could I be? Who am I if I forgot who I thought I was? So there's that idea of living from the mind. And all through school, I had a very square, rigid box of a sense of self. And this was, a combination of programming that I chose to incarnate with, as well as just a lot of stuff that I internalized from messaging around subconsciously, the collective human consciousness, and also just like direct feedback that I was receiving from my environment, kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy or the influence of identity being reinforced in a way. And for me, that was very much academics and constantly being praised for academics. My identity became wrapped up in that. Naturally, I identified myself as being, someone who just gets straight A's. And so as I approached, through high school and college, in moments where that was potentially, it felt like it was being threatened. So that became equated with survival for me in terms of that separation consciousness programming of, if I don't get an A, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough. And so I'm not even going to venture into the territory of where that's even a possibility. I'm going to work hard, because I was very much believing that hard work was necessary. I'm going to work hard and make sure, this is all from the mind and the squinty forehead, I'm going to make sure that I do everything in my power to guarantee that I uphold this sense of self. I uphold these really values, I suppose, these qualities and values that I identified with. And this was all, this was all internal. Like of course, there were subliminal or subconscious messages or things that I was just picking up in the energetics of what was, even though I wouldn't have described it as such at the time. Like as I was awakening to all of my programming, I would say maybe through college, it first began as me being like, oh, I've actually internalized all of these external expectations. So I kind of saw it in that framing of, okay, some things were coming to me from the outside in rather than from the inside out. Whereas now my perspective on it is that even there being an outside and inside is kind of an illusion, and it's all just one, and I include that which seems to be outside me as well, and it just happens to be that was the choice of the path, the evolutionary path, the path of remembrance that I got to experience. And in creating this rigid box, because to my mind, that box was safe. I know it's kind of like, not a chemical reaction, an equation. It's like an equation where, okay, I know that if I put in this plus this, then I'll get this outcome. Like I had solved the equation for grades in school and I knew what to plug in. And so since I found what worked, I just kept doing it and could adapt that to different teachers because, every teacher has different expectations and do. I'd cracked the academic code in a way that worked for me. And as quote unquote successful as that was, I was very adept at getting A's. I was coming at it from fear. It was all through and because of fear, the fear of not getting an A, the fear of not achieving my fullest potential. Because that's really part of what it came down to in this programming was I'd always known from a young age that I had this vast capacity, this extraordinary potential. And when people would say, or just the aphorism, oh yeah, just try your best, just do your best, I knew that my best was getting A's, and that just happened to be the institution in which I was operating at the time. I was very much in the system, and so the system was like, this is success, this is the goal. And so I was like, okay, that's the goal. These are certain markers, getting straight A's, in high school being valedictorian. These are markers that I can then focus my Mars energy drive, because I have a lot of Mars influence in my astrological chart, my fiery focus in that direction. And at the same time, there was always the seeker in me, this sense of, okay, what am I passionate about? Like I don't know what I'm passionate about. Other people seem to be lit up by things that they just know, and they see that and they're like, okay, I'm going to do piano or baseball. That's it. I'm going to commit to baseball. And there was part of me that always longed for that focus, that thing that I could just pour my heart and soul into. And yeah, I got the experience of directionlessness, of feeling lost and confused and not knowing where I was meant to be. When in actuality, it's like without that thought, like without, this goes back to the head versus the heart, and it's not even a versus, it's the head and the heart, because from the spaciousness of the heart, and I love the heart center, it's like the heart includes the mind. Like the heart is just like big, open, vast hugs, which I love hugs. The hug includes even the mind. Without the thought that I have no direction, again, it's like, who am I if I forget who I am? Without the thought that I have no direction, where am I? Who am I? Oh, well, I am here. My direction is actually here. It's right here. It's being me. It's being now. And I'm so glad that I got to box myself in. Yeah, that's what I did. I boxed myself in. And not just, academics and grades and the fear of potentially getting an A minus and how that would destroy my. It felt like it would completely destroy and obliterate my sense of self. And why did I care about my sense of self? Because I was in tribal consciousness programming of needing belonging and longing to feel acceptance from a group, the group being a peer group, but also just humanity. It's like for all of my peers to kind of like a fall from grace. That's what it was like. And I ended up not falling from grace, but I did. I chose to leap. That's what I did. Yeah. So rather than it being a fall from grace, well, I did have. There's one year. It was my sophomore year of high school where, and interesting that I like put my arms back in that moment. There was like just an interesting energy that I put my arms behind me as I shifted into the potentiality of talking about my sophomore year of high school when I there was an award ceremony at the end of each year, and in my sophomore year I only got one award. And I know how that sounds however it sounds. Only got one award rather than the prior year where I had like awards in multiple different departments. But it was crushing for me. I was so upset. I felt like an utter failure for having only gotten one award that year. I was like, and even though I got straight A's, but I only had one award, and I was like, man, it was like this wake up call, and I was like, I have not been trying hard enough in school. I haven't been focused enough. It was like the year of 16th birthday parties, if that's like any context. I think it was more of like a friendship, social development year. And in that, my academics shifted, my relationship to them kind of shifted, and I only got one award. And it also sounds silly because it almost sounds like the way that high school Pei-Ling operated was that back to the equation, like if I plug in X, Y, and Z, I know that I'm going to get this solution. Like it was very much from this internal locus of control mindset of not hacking the system, but just feeling like I had such an in-depth understanding of how academics and academic awards worked that I was like, oh yeah, of course if I do this, then there will be this outcome. And I didn't start high school I went to a different high school than middle school, and middle school is not like an award time. I always got A's, but there was something that shifted for me when I went to high school where suddenly there was this level of prestige that that my mind was set upon and had its eye secretly towards. And I say secretly because there was a part of me that was also judging my desire to shine. And I say shine because to me at that time, that was the epitome of shining. Like shining meant being at the top of the class, shining meant getting straight A's, shining meant wearing forest green blazers and business casual like circle skirts. Yeah, sweet high school Pei-Ling. And I started high school with a clear, and I even vocalized this, I verbalized this to my mom at least, or to my family. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be valedictorian, I'm going to get straight A's, and I'm going to go to an elite college. Like that was a top tier school, straight A's, and valedictorian. Those were my like three things that I set out for myself. And little did I know at the time the power of manifest. I didn't know anything about like manifestation and conscious manifestation. I didn't. Those were, I suppose, innate to me. They were innate. It was the choice and the willpower and the focus and the self-belief that it was possible. I just believed and I knew that it was a possible thing for me because it was. And then I kind of I didn't have the expectation that those things were going to happen, but I held on to that vision. And over the course of high school, you know, different like comparison thoughts or self-judgment of, oh wow, there are so many like do, and they're probably gonna, that's like, I saw it as a competitive environment. I mean, especially for something like valedictorian, which there's an inherent overlay of hierarchy built into that of this is the one standout student from this class of like 400 students. That's quite a thing. And yet I saw that and I was like, that's me. And yeah, my path to getting there in my mind was, oh yeah, I just focus on school, I work hard, and then it'll just be done. And then I'll be successful. Then I'll have achieved all of my brightest dreams, and my future life will just be a guaranteed win because I'll be going to a great college, and then I'll, you know, study really hard. After I study really hard in college, that will guarantee me a great job, and then I'll work in this great job and earn money to support and provide for my family. And then after I provide for my family, then I'll get to retire maybe when I'm 60, and then that's when I'll have this, you know, pile of money to rest upon and simply just enjoy my life. And that's when I'll enjoy my life and enjoy my progeny and the family that is expansive and all these things. And I remember when I heard myself saying that out loud, this 1, 2, 3 step vision for my life when I was a junior. And so I was 17. And as soon as I heard myself say that out loud, it was kind of like surfacing this subconscious programming that was also very conscious that I just believed and identified with for so long that I didn't realize how I didn't actually want that. Like it was only when I said it that I got to see it outside of myself, and in high school, my sense of self was very much all in the head. Like even the fact that I was so identified with academics and being intellectual or being smart or being good at taking tests or whatever it is, it's like my entire self-worth and self-identity was wrapped up in the forehead. Even as I'm talking about it now, there's this energy and pressure in the forebrain. And I got to, oh yes, let me just, circling back to the sophomore year grades and feeling like a failure, that was like my little pendulum swing. And then I swung it way back the other way. And the next few years I, you know, got the awards that I envisioned myself getting, and then was valedictorian and blah, 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 all the things. And when I did find out my senior year that I was valedictorian, I was genuinely thrilled. I was so happy, so shocked and surprised. Like it was like my dream that I had held close to my heart was coming true. And it was like, wow, this really happened. This thing that I imagined is now here. And then, and of course there's an and then, it's like, what happens when your dreams come true? And there was also a level of, so I got the straight A's, I got the valedictorian, but based on the programming of what my mind had identified as a top tier college, I had failed because I ended up not going to a school that was within my definition of a top tier. And even though I'd gotten into like all the other schools I applied for, because I didn't get into that toppest of top tippity top tier, based on, again, the programming that my mind was identified with based on the context and the society that I chose to grow up in. Because context, that's, the environment in which we grow up is so informing the programming that we then get to deprogram. And for me, that was growing up in Silicon Valley, where STEM and tech and do and having a Chinese Malaysian dad and an English Irish mom and just like a biracial existence, and also going to being very immersed. Like all my friend groups were like, all of my friends had immigrant parents, and pretty much most people were Asian, either Chinese or Taiwanese or Vietnamese, and Cantonese, also Cantonese. And also I was in a bilingual Mandarin immersion program. That was from preschool to 8th grade, I was learning both Mandarin and English in school full time. And so that's just like a primer on the context in which the programming specific to this incarnation for me came from. And yeah, that's where this like very work hard, achievement, survival mindset was the flavor of it for me. And that was the most angry year I got to experience. It was 2015, and that was the year that I graduated high school and then went to college. And that year for me was just full of anger and bitterness and resentment, and it was like my equation broke. Like, I thought that if I do XYZ equals blah, 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 then I'll get these things. But then the way that life unfolded for the college, which even, my feelings about college have changed naturally. The whole college thing, the fact that it was like, oh, this didn't actually turn out the way that I expected. There was this resistance, going back to the meditation of welcoming resistance. I had this major resistance to what was true and present in my reality, which was, okay, I didn't get into or got waitlisted at these seemingly top tier schools. I am going to be giving a speech at graduation as valedictorian. And the combination of those two things sparked and triggered such anxiety and dread in me. Like the shame that I felt about going to the school that I went to and chose to go to, which is Boston College. That's the university I went to. And absolutely, that's 100% where I was meant to be. That was a perfectly aligned, divinely aligned place for me to be. And I'm so grateful that I got to go there. And for senior year high school Pei-Ling in Silicon Valley, the prospect of being announced as being valedictorian and going to Boston College for me I was just so deep in the shame of that. Like, it felt like a failure to me. Because the prior valedictorians of the high school that I went to, Harvard and MIT and probably like Caltech and, just blah, 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 those types of schools. And here I was just going to Boston College, which, zooming out, to many people, Boston College is a top tier school. Like, it's all arbitrary and just reflective of that programming at the time. And even the whole system of hierarchical rankings of colleges, blah, 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 blah. Like I'm just, just clearing all of that, blah, blah, la, 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 la. And I'm so, again, just so grateful that it triggered such intense emotion of failure for me, because that was all rocket fuel. It catalyzed so much for me, and harboring all of that anger, especially when then I went to college and I was like, it just all felt like a crapshoot to me, who gets into what college. And I was like, oh, but I know that I would thrive at any of these other colleges. So why? It challenged my, yeah, it just challenged my sense of self and my self-worth. Because it's like, okay, I know that I am capable of not just coasting in these other schools, but thriving there. And yet I didn't get in. And that they talk about the whole, like, so many qualified applicants, blah, blah, blah. But really, if I neutralize it and look at it from that level of energy and divine path and all these things, I only got into the schools that I was a vibrational match for, that I was meant to potentially go to. And those other schools simply weren't a vibrational match for me. The reason being infinite, like there are infinite reasons, and I don't need to know the reasons now. I don't need to know the reasons now, but it very much challenged thinking mind intellectualizing Pei-Ling, because it did not make logical sense. And so when things don't seem to make sense and yet they are, how do we proceed? Where do I go from there? How do I come to accept? And that really was like that shift from anger to acceptance was a profound journey for me that first year of college. That, okay, I'm angry that I'm here. I'm angry that this is where I am. I was doing a lot of comparison of, why are academics so easy here? That I had this belief that college should be hard, or even that college should be academically focused. Like, what, and whatever academics mean, like it can't be, wishy-washy, soft liberal arts academics. Like communications was not a good enough major or something. I was like, I'm going to do chemistry and philosophy, but even philosophy, because of all the programming. And I remember my dad being, I think he sent me an article being like, no one succeeds in philosophy with a philosophy major. I ended up majoring in neither of those things. I majored in international studies, which was my self-compromise of, okay, this is legitimate enough, and yet it is still in the social sciences and the what are they called? Not the political arts, interdisciplinary arts kind of thing. Yeah, the journey from anger to acceptance. And I'm so grateful for retreats. So grateful for the experience of going on retreat and getting to connect with others on a level of humanness and wholeness and heart-centeredness. Because I remember I went on a retreat during the winter break of my freshman year of college, and that really profoundly shifted my experience, because it helped me connect with similar wavelength people in the college environment. Like I got to be like, oh wow, here are some people that I really connect with. So having a sense of community it can be very helpful. And also it inspired this realization that for me, college wasn't actually, maybe it wasn't about academics. Maybe my purpose for being at Boston College was not actually for the academics, but for all the other aspects of life that I had not been engaging with while I was so focused and my self-worth was so wrapped up in academics. And so that was the beginning of taking my box of Pei-Ling gets straight A's, Pei-Ling is good, Pei-Ling is smart, Pei-Ling does the right thing, Pei-Ling dresses a certain way, Pei-Ling doesn't drink or, isn't interested in doing any drugs or anything like that. Pei-Ling is just good and smart and perfect in her own way and blah, 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 blah. That was the beginning of the shifting of me living from within that box. And then my, subsequent years in college helped me shatter that box. And did I build new boxes? I'm sure. Maybe there were like some new boxes built, but that original box, that, birth to high school box that I had for myself, going to college and getting to step outside of that and look back and be like, whoa, that was a narrow box that I was trapping myself in. I was choosing to experience being trapped within that box. Though I wouldn't have used that language, I'd be like, oh, this box is just who I am. It is safe and it's comfortable and it's good and it's right. And that box was a mind box. It wasn't a heart box, but I always had the longing of heart connection. My heart was always calling to me, especially in friendship. And like I always sought a level of depth in my friendship, but my heart was closed. Like in that box, it's like there was, just as there was a box around my mind, there was a box that was guarding my heart. And I didn't know how to soften that. And I wanted to, but it seemed so hard and challenging and scary. And that to me was essentially where that realization that, okay, college maybe isn't about academics for me, but it's about social life, friendship, even spirituality. I sought out a spiritual director my freshman year of college, even though I wouldn't have self-identified as spiritual or definitely not religious, even though I went to a Catholic high school in college, and then worked in another Catholic high school. That idea of mentorship, of guidance, and being able to talk about things like morality and ethics and life as a whole was something that I really valued. And yeah, I got to, through spiritual direction in college, I got to ask myself questions and also have conversations about questions like, what does it even mean to believe in God? Like, how can somebody believe in God and yet act and live a different way? Like, how can you say that you love or you believe in Jesus and yet not live within or from Christ consciousness, or just love? The kind of seeming hypocrisy of that was a very mind question. All of those questions were very mind questions. They weren't heart questions. But there was heart in the questions too. Anyway, boxes around my mind and my heart, academics, spirituality. Yeah, and what's present for me right now in this moment is simply this compassion that I have for all of these ages that I've gotten to experience the me's that I have been, and who are fully, even the fact that they're showing up and we're communing together now. I'm so grateful that they get to be with us and to share these aspects of what I've gotten to experience with you from the place of love and that open armed heart hug, welcoming what is present. And the beauty that I found in letting academics be easy for me, that was really, I would say, where the beginning of, oh, it's okay if I don't work hard. That was the beginning of that for me, of realizing, okay, I don't actually have to work that hard and I still get A's. And so that was a massive discovery that I was grinding myself in high school. And, even when I was like in second grade, I was grinding myself for book reports and stuff. And then I discovered, oh, I actually don't need to grind. I can float, I can coast, still get A's, and have all this spacious free time to explore extracurricular activities and friendship and just like explore the city and hang out and travel and enjoy life, the fullness of life. And I'm so glad and grateful that I remembered that I was free to do that and remembered that I gave myself permission for life to be easy. And then I just kept letting it get easier and easier. Yeah, that's really what happened. Even my senior year of college, when I had a moment in my fall semester where it was just the season of applying for jobs. Like, what are you going to do after college? What are you going to do after college? This ending looming, and then it's like, what is the new beginning after the ending? And this mind need to know. And I was doing all my like LinkedIn informational interviews. I was always very proactive. It's actually kind of funny and endearing to think about. I was very proactive with like connections, and I loved connecting with people who were already, living their lives in a career that maybe I was interested in, whether it was a TV producer or actually I did do a lot of informational interviews with people in media. So there was something there was something there clearly that I was interested in, which is funny, the irony of me being poo-pooing communications as a major when really that's what I do and I enjoy. But even that, like my choice to do international studies and to study things like government and UN and just war theory and game theory and economics, it was an intentional choice on my part to study the things that I wasn't going to study on my own. Like I saw college as, okay, how do I make the most? Oh, I very much had that. I had that belief. It's like college is such an investment. It is such an investment on every level. How do I make the most of this experience? And when I first went to college in my first year, I was like, okay, making the most of this experience means doing the most. Like even before I started my freshman year, I joined a club. There was this club called Women in Business, and I contacted the people running Women in Business, and I ended up like getting myself a board position on the club board on my freshman year, and I was just like already going all in. And I ended up discovering that club was not really in alignment with me, and so I got to like stop that. But it was this really eager from fear. There was an eagerness to and the word coming up is capitalize, to capitalize on my experience, because I was afraid of wasting my time, wasting resources, wasting energy, wasting money on something that might not be worth it. And that is quite a frequency to live from. The fear of wasting, and because it's in that survival, and it comes from a very valid place of people's lived experiences, whether it's like my parents or my ancestors, and who had the bodily experience of physical not enoughness, like not enough food or warmth or space, and feeling that and living that. And we can be living from those programs without realizing that we're living from programs that didn't originate with us, that aren't actually serving us anymore. And I just found so much more peace in trusting that, or really just letting myself not do as much. That, oh, what if I'm actually only in like one club and not 5? And what if I don't have to? My freshman year, that was the first time that I was interested in doing my yoga teacher training, but I was also doing all these other things plus classes, and I was looking at research positions. I basically had a checklist of like, these are the things that a successful person does in college, and then let me just like go through and do all those things. And I ended up not doing all those things, which was perfect. I can tell you that I did an online magazine, like I was an editor of a newspaper, because I did that in high school too. But even right now, I'm like remembering what I did in college, and what I remember more is the evolution of myself rather than what I necessarily did, and like the people that I spent time with and the experiences that I got to have. I can tell you that classes are not at the top of the list. Like learning in classes, there were some classes, of course, and this is, I'm thinking from the mind right now, and I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, discerning what blah blah blah, but what's present now. Because the truth is, even if I forgot all of my college experience, if I forgot in this now moment that I ever existed up until this now moment, I would still be me. And that is what it is all about. Because all of this reflecting into the past, yes, it can be, obviously, I mean, it might not be obvious, but it's come up because it has been true to be expressed in this present moment for whatever reason. Even if you're listening to this in 2053, maybe it's a historical artifact to see, oh, wow, humans lived like that. And I now get to remember that even if all of that just flew away from my memory, I would still be me, because it's all of these experiences. As we experience things, experiences activate things within us, and we integrate the energetics of it. So it's kind of like eating food. Eating food is an experience, but we hold on to the nutrients and then we just release what we're complete with, and that's like experiences. Memories are not something like my experience of recalling memories that seem like they're in the past. It's like they're relevant to me because they're arising in the present, and there's obviously, wow, I say obviously. There's something here. A memory from the past arising in the present is simply information for what is here. And there's something fun about that there's like richness in in everything. That an experience ripples out through the course of our life, regardless of the element of time. I can experience something when I'm 6, when I'm 16, when I'm 80, and that is rippling in all the directions, which is pretty cool. And then our relationship to what that memory is, and that's where reprogramming is so cool, is that I get to now go to valedictorian Pei-Ling, who is so anxious and so felt so ashamed, and I get to just wrap my arms around her and look her in the eyes and hug her and say, you are amazing. You are amazing. You are perfect. You are whole. You are exactly where you are meant to be. And look, like, this is who we are. We are joyful and at peace. We are content, and we are living in easeful service. We are contributing. We are radiating truth and illuminating beauty. And there's actually nothing we have to do. We just get to be as we are. And even as I say these words with her present now, it's like 18-year-old Pei-Ling is, there's this shoulder dropping sensation, this relief, this wow, this amazement that this is who I get to be. That's wow. Wow. And that reprogramming of memories of, because bringing up is one thing. It's like, anyway, I could go through all the beliefs that I once believed, talking about the boxes of my mind and my heart. But that point of anger to acceptance is the meeting of love. It's embracing these parts, these experiences with compassion and self-forgiveness. That it's, I was showing up in my fullest divine potential at that time, even if I didn't realize it, even if I forgot that, even if I forgot the divinity that I am, even if I chose to experience life with this inner conflict and struggle and effort, all of that gets to be included and welcomed in the beauty of what is. Because even if I was seeming to live from a box and put myself in a box and was so afraid from the mind, the survival mind, it's like, is in some ways, even the box, the physical body can be experienced as this limitation, this box of limitation. And so that's why I love inviting the question of, okay, do you end where your skin ends? Does the you that you are end where it seems like this border is defining you or separating you from that which is outside of you? And that may sound like an abstract question, but it's a very direct, embodied experience. You could even now, and I find closing the eyes can be helpful with this, just allowing the awareness to go to the edges of you, your sense of what your edges are. Do you even have an edge? And then when you say that there is an edge that arises, so maybe that's the border of your skin. And when the eyes are closed, we're not referencing memory. We're not going into the past of where we remember our skin to be. It's going with the direct experience of right now, as though you've totally forgotten who you are, what shape you are, where you are, in your direct experience of now. Are there edges to you? And if so, what happens when you explore those edges? What quality is present in the edge? Is it a hard edge or a soft edge? Is it fuzzy or blurry? Is there a temperature? When I tune in, there are no edges to me. It's like I begin in the heart and I explore out, and that which seems to be an edge as I approach it, it just keeps going and going and going beyond the walls of this room, beyond this world, this earth. It's infinite. And in the infinite spaciousness, I still am. I don't end where my feet touch the floor. And the cool thing is that science gets to show that too, affirm that when we just zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, everything is just vibration and space. It's just spaciousness and energy. And we can directly experience that when we drop awareness down from the mind into the heart, into the body. And I can even experience the expansiveness of the mind as well. And there's just so much body underneath the head as well to explore and to experience. And so in that edgelessness, in that infinite space of the self, the whole self, the multidimensional self, the self that includes all of the things that seem to be around, the air, the plant friends, the walls and the floor. Again, that question of resistance is there anything within you that you would rather not be there? Are there any boxes that you notice that are being drawn? And then if you notice the box, then you notice that you are the one noticing the box and you're not only the box. Like, are you only that which resists? Are you only that which wishes something would be different? Or are you that which includes the one that resists? Or are you that which includes the energy of maybe it's pain or discomfort or whatever label you resonate with? To me, it's sensation. Ultimately, everything just comes down to sensation, whether it's a thought form or a physical me. It's an expression of sensation, or emotion is just sensation, and then it manifests as energy in different areas of the body. And that direct experience of now and here, it simplifies all of that chitter chatter of the mind. It simplifies any question of who am I, or what do I do, where do I go? Because all of the answers, the guidance is in the direct experience of now. I am, and I am here. And the way that this now moment connects to the next now moment is just like the breath. It breathes through me. It breathes through us. It breathes through the body. And the next thing you know, you're in another breath. It's like the next thing you know, you're in another now moment. And so here is where, once more, we'll just transition to a comfortable posture and position, maybe with the eyes closed, as we close out this sacred space, our time together, which is as infinite as we allow it to be. And placing one hand on the belly and one hand on the heart, and like an easeful waterfall, any energy that is in the crown and the mind, letting it glide down this waterfall, down through the spine and the heart space, into the belly and the root, down through the tailbone, all the way down into the earth. And this waterfall can continue on its own, flowing through the spine and the column of the self, connecting the crown with the root, and gifting anything that is complete as compost into the soil, into the earth, into the open arms receptivity of Gaia. And maybe for you, this waterfall has a color of light associated with it, or a quality of the water. Maybe it's a waterfall of flowers or of mist. Just trusting whatever is aligned in your experience now. Letting the breath soften into the touch of your own hands, into soft chest and soft belly. Connecting with your center, the center from which you experience from, the love that you are. And offering gratitude to the body, to the breath, to the divine being that you are. Offering gratitude to all the guides and ancestors, spirits and friends of all realms and dimensions who are here supporting and contributing, illuminating and inspiring us and all now. And offering gratitude to this beautiful earth star, all the elements and creatures, all the plants and possibilities, offering gratitude to loved ones and ones that are unknown. And finally, offering gratitude to whatever is present for you now. Bringing awareness to the touch of the palms upon the body. Lengthening the breath. Feeling the chest and belly expand. Maybe beginning to sway the spine side to side, forward and back, any way that feels yummy and nourishing right now. Feeling into the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, and the cervical spine and the neck. This connected column, this highway of energy, this grounding cord as the bridge of heaven and earth that you are inherently. And now, going to stillness once more, feeling energy rising from the root all the way through the crown, this lifting energy of golden light, nourishing from the ground, connected with the skies above, maybe even reaching the arms up and stretching, and whenever ready, blinking the eyes open. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, beautiful friend. I am joyful and grateful and receptive to the gift of your presence with me and with us in this spiraling space. Much love.